Program. I'm Temple Ashaju. The National Bureau of Statistics this week released the inflation report for May 2017 with headline inflation further slowing on a year-on-year basis due to high base effect. The Consumer Price Index rose 16.25% year-on-year in May, representing the fourth consecutive month of decline and 99 basis points lower than the 17.24% recorded in April. The lesser-than-expected decline is mainly attributable to the steeper increase in food prices, which drove on month-on-month basis the headline inflation to 1.9% relative to 1.6% that we saw in the month of April. While this macroeconomic indicator has impacted the market by way of a forward guidance, operators and regulators are upping their game to keep the growing confidence in the investor sentiment ongoing. This week at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, the third edition of the NSE Bloomberg CEO Roundtable held with thought leaders, policymakers and top Dutch executives brainstorming on how to create the needed economic shifts from the current resource-dependent economy to one where value is created across all points of the supply chain. And on the program this evening, we'll engage one of the capital market operators on how the Nigerian economy can receive its boost through the capital markets. But that's the outline for our program. Let's kick off now with some of the news that we had in the markets this week, and those are news that helped investors to shape their decision. The Senate President, Dr. Bukola Saraki, during the week promised to facilitate the passage of laws relating to the domestic capital markets. At a meeting with officials of the Securities and Exchange Commission in Abuja, Dr. Saraki says the 7 laws presented will be passed soon to allow for robust capital markets that will aid economic development. On his part, the Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mr. Munir Gwazo, says the passage of the bills will restore confidence in the Nigerian capital market space.
We have or carry out the necessary amendments to these laws that will be in line with best practices now and create and ensure Nigeria is an investment destination, and as such be able to help our people provide jobs, employment, fight poverty, and create wealth. Well, I want to assure you that these reports will not just lie and without anything being done with them. I promise you that you can start counting the clock now and ensure that we'll start the process and hopefully very soon be able to pass this bill. These are very, very important bills for us. I believe that by passing those bills, we would really make an impact on the economy of the country.
Our prayer, Your Excellency, is that the President of the Senate fulfill the promise he made to the capital market community on June 6, 2016, by supporting the speedy passage of those bills, which are the Investment and Securities Act, the Companies and Allied Matters Act, the Trustees Investment Act, the Pension Reform Act, the Financial Reporting Council Act, the Warehousing Bill Act, and of course the Demutualization Act. Lastly, it's also our prayer that given the depth of work that has been put into this task, the National Assembly should adopt the reports of the various law review committees as the working documents of the amendment of these laws.
Let's now get to the NSE Bloomberg CEO Roundtable that held yesterday at the Nigerian Stock Exchange and take a look at some of the takeaways from that event. At that meeting, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, said the federal government is planning to review the guidelines for public-private partnerships in the country. Mrs. Adeosun revealed this at the NSE Bloomberg CEO Roundtable, which held this week at the exchange. She says the strategy aims to stimulate investments in the country's infrastructure development.
Signalling strongly that we will continue to prioritise infrastructure spending as a fiscal lever to unlock growth. In the last 12 months, we've expended approximately 1.2 trillion on capital projects. Our road spend alone was over 200 billion, and this compares to 19 billion in 2015. In 2016, transport and aviation received 143 billion. This compares to 6 billion in 2015. This drive is coupled with important reforms in the ease of doing business, which will address the soft infrastructure that will enable businesses and commercial activities to flourish. We recognise that there is no point in doing one without doing the other. The two must be done at the same time. Our infrastructure deficit is so deep and so critical that, as Professor Salami said, we fully recognise that government cannot do it alone. Even if we were to dedicate our entire budget to capital projects, and before you suggest it, that's not possible. But even if we were able to, it wouldn't be sufficient. Such is our infrastructure gap. So it is critical that we will engage with the private sector. And to this end, we intend to revive public-private partnerships in Nigeria. We are presently reviewing the PPP framework, but also we're trying to resolve outstanding issues with existing and even failed PPP projects. And we do this because we recognise that until some of those legacy projects are resolved, no new investors will come in. So we're moving backwards in order to move forward. Investor confidence will grow as a function of how we rectify the inherited situations rather than how quickly we can open up new opportunities. Nigeria's private sector is extremely efficient, is resilient and is creative, but it needs predictability in policy, and therefore we do need to go back and fix some of those failed PPPs, and that we are doing.
The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, there. But still with the NSE Bloomberg CEO roundtable, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Mr. Oscar Onyema, said that policy sustainability for the ease of doing business is one of the major requirements for attracting and maintaining foreign portfolio investments in the country. Mr. Onyema mentions this in a chat with journalists after the NSE Bloomberg CEO roundtable at the exchange. Let's listen.
In order to make the investments sustainable, even through downturns, we have to be consistent with policy, and we have to create policies that facilitate those kinds of transactions, allowing market forces to really determine prices, price discovery, and the allocation of resources. The final thing I want to say is, if we want to make sure that foreign portfolio investors continue to stay invested through downturns in an environment, in a global environment where capital is highly fungible, people can easily move from country to country. We have to make sure that it is easy to do business in Nigeria. We have to make sure that we are highly competitive in our industries, in the returns that we provide for investors, both domestic and foreign. And finally, we need to make sure that the buffers are built in, so that in situations of high returns and high growth rates, that we're creating solid buffers, so that when you go through down cycles, it is not, the shock is highly moderated, and therefore easier for investors to go through.